Hey, what's up, guys? Today on the Locked On Knicks podcast, I'm joined by Chuck of the Chucking Darts podcast to tell you why Pacome Dadiet might have been the steal of the 2024 NBA draft.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Knicks, and today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. And I wanted to thank you for making Locked On Knicks your first listen today and every day, because we're now available on all platforms. So be sure to subscribe and hit that notifications bell to ensure you never miss an episode. Seriously, we're going like 10 times this week. So it's really, really useful to do just that. And it helps out the podcast. Comment, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. And be sure to do the same on your favorite podcast platform of choice. Hit that auto download function to ensure you never miss an episode. But who's talking to you? I'm Gavin Schall, your favorite play-by-play broadcaster's favorite play-by-play broadcaster today. Lucky enough to be joined by someone whose draft coverage I've been reading for years, who I've been following for years. Chuck of Chucking Darts, just one of the best people out there covering the NBA draft, flat out. And he is super duper high on Pacome Dadiet. So we talk about why he's so enthused about his prospects of becoming an excellent NBA player. And then we get into Tyler Kolek and whether or not he could be the Knicks backup point guard as soon as this season. So all that and more right now on Locked On Knicks. All right, guys, as promised, lucky enough to be joined by Chuck of the Chucking Darts podcast. You can also check out an immense amount of excellent draft writing from him on his Substack, which will be linked in the episode description. Chuck, thank you so much for enjoying the show. I know we were just talking about it a little bit, but how'd you enjoy the draft this year? Obviously not one with a lot of hype, but I know for the people who do this year round, every draft is kind of special in its own way.
Yeah, man, it's Christmas in June. It's lovely. The fun of doing all of the work all year is, number one, seeing everyone get really excited over the draft, because even if it doesn't have a lot of hype, everyone, like, the time of year the finals are over, everyone wants their fix, and so everyone dives into the draft and crams over that 10-day period. So the enthusiasm was certainly there, and it's in seeing all the kids get their name called and get really pumped up, and you feel like you've been at least living vicariously a bit through them since you've watched so much of their stuff. And in a year like this, where there's so much uncertainty, those years are personally more exhilarating for me, because there's room for some debate and for some disagreement about the top of the draft. I know that we're going to talk about Mr. Dadiet, who I was a big fan of. And so, it's when there's stuff like that floating around, that's what is most, I guess, intellectually gratifying, is like, you put in the work all year, but watching 20 Wemby games, you're not going to come to a unique opinion about Victor Wembanyama. It's just going to be like, hey, it's the best one. So, like, when there's room to disagree about what that might be, that's when you really get into, I guess, some of the fun of
and I know
work.
I appreciated that, looking at your board, and I'm seeing that you had Zach Edey number one, and someone where, like, it's incredible the variety of opinions on him. I know our guy Prez, like, he put him at 14th and said, all right, this is kind of the coward's way out, because either he's a top 5 guy, or like maybe he shouldn't have even gone in the first round. But I do think there's beauty in that for people like you, who put just an extraordinary amount of time and work into this. I can't even imagine the satisfaction of looking back 5 years down the road and saying, all right, I nailed it with that guy, and then your friend come back, all right, we got this guy wrong, I got this guy right, and just the variety of opinions. And I mean, that's what makes it so fun. And part of the reason I wanted to talk to you was because of that enthusiasm on Pacome Dadiet. You had him, correct me if I'm off on this, but I had him as the 9th prospect on your big board.
Yep.
Let's start as simple as possible. Why are you so high on his game?
I am high on his game because, as a wing player, I think he has sort of a gift for understanding what he can do on the court, and he's ambitious enough to know that he's going to expand it. Like, I'd like to compare him to other people besides Shai, but since Shai went number 1 and they're, same age, basically, Pacome's a few months younger, and they played each other this year. Pacome played in the German league, Shai played in the French league, but in Euro Cup, which is like a mix exhibition in the middle of the season, Pacome's team went to Shai's arena, played his team, and beat his team. And the French league is considered better than German. I watched that game, and there's a difference in approach between those two players. The reason I ended up higher on Pacome than I did Zachary is that I thought that he read the game within the flow of the game at a higher level. Pacome and Zachary are both 6'9", wingspan about the same as well. Pacome is more strongly built. He's like a solid 210. Zachary is probably closer to like 195. Zachary moves better laterally and is the better defender, and I think that's why ESPN seized on him so early in the process as a top 5 pick, is because you want to see the 3 and the D, if you're looking for an archetype in those terms. But Pacome, to me, like, I tend to value offensive talent a little bit more at the top of the draft if I'm looking for guys to be aggressive on. Finding guys who can shoot threes and play defense is all well and good, but if you're looking at how the league unfolds and what players tend to rise to the top, it's the ones who have like real outlier offensive gifts who manage to like not be a disaster on defense. You get exceptions on the other side. You get your Alex Carusos or your Lou Dorts or whatever. But by and large, it's precocious offensive talent that can find a way to fit into a defensive scheme. And I thought that Pacome was used off the ball much like, Zachary was, but I thought that he, relocated and cut in a way where you could see him really reading the game about, this is happening here, I'm going to go there. This space is filling, I'm going to, lift to either give a player an easier angle in the post or to make myself more available for a pass or whatever. Risacher would do a little bit of that, but he almost looked like he was playing off of a script where it was, I do whatever, 4 things on offense. If the ball comes to me on the wing and I'm open, I know I'm supposed to shoot it. So it's coming to me. I'm not going to read anything. It's just boom, it's gone. And I think that if I'm betting on someone to be really aggressive and to succeed at the NBA level and grow their games, I just think that reading the floor is very important. And I just saw him doing that a little bit more. His true shooting was very, very good, low usage, but you could tell that he had touch. You could tell that he had craft around the hoop, and his burst is a little bit worse than Zachary's. So he had to develop some counters and some cleverness about how he created angles for himself and when he was going to cut and sort of varying the pace of his game. Whereas Zachary was like straight line, sprint all of the time. And when they played each other, like, Pacome got him. There was a tweet I sent out about him that was like clipping their matchup because they guarded one another. And Pacome just got him on several different cuts. Either cuts around a pin down or backdoor cuts, where Risacher, one of the things that people talk about as such a great skill of his is his ability to defend off the ball. And Dadiet was not bothered by him at all defending off the ball because it was all about timing and placement and being able to finish with touch once you've received the ball. And I thought Pacome had that. As the season wore on, he alternated starting and coming off the bench. Juan Nunez, who was drafted, was his team's starting point guard. They have a couple other familiar names. Trevion Williams played at Purdue with Zach Edey a couple years ago. He's their sort of passing center. But Pacome, he would alternate starting and coming off the bench, but towards the end of the season, and their team was good, he got some more pick and roll reps. And you could just tell that he had, he'd repped it out. He had sort of a knack for it. He knew how to read the low man. He knew how to try to keep that person engaged. He was patient with his dribble until he got the top foot to attack. And his passing reads were good. Nothing, you didn't see anything like Luka-ish about him, but you saw that none of this was foreign. It was more of a matter of waiting for the opportunity. And then once he got the opportunity, you saw that he had the skill. With Risacher, I just have never seen him play that way. I've never seen him approach the court where he's like, I know what my reads are. I'm going to take a deep breath, take my time, and sort of try to mold a possession myself. He's like, I'm going to finish plays, kind of like Keegan Murray. When he, on the Kings, he plays off of Sabonis, and his job is like very rote. It's just dunks, threes, cuts, defense, and I think the Kings want him to expand his game, and I actually think Keegan probably can. But when it's wired that way, Keegan's 23, 24, and was an all-around just player of the year monster at Iowa, did everything for them. But when, as a youth player, before you get in the NBA, you have so little experience in manipulating possessions, which is what I feel with Risacher, then I feel like it's hard to undo that wiring. It's hard to come into the most competitive league in the world with the most offensive talent in the world, and Risacher is going to be in Atlanta. How many possessions is he taking away from Trae Young or DeJounte Murray running pick and roll? How is he supposed to expand his creativity when he's not used to doing it in the first place and the usage on his team is already accounted for? With Pacome, you could tell, like, if he gets a chance, then he has a bag. And because he's well built, not just with regular wing size, but like 6'9" is real wing size. Like Steph Castle, who goes fourth, to me has sort of like borderline fake wing size because he's like 6'6" in shoes, whereas Pacome is 6'9" plus in shoes, and with that handle and with his touch, I just think it's the dribble, pass, shoot baseline that you always look for. I saw him as sort of a similar kind of prospect to Cody Williams, who got top 10 love all year, except Cody has a 7'1" wingspan, moves a bit better on defense, and I preferred Cody for that purpose. But I don't see a whole lot of difference in the offensive talent between him and Pacome. And so, he turns 19 after Summer League ends, one of the youngest players in the class. And since he's coming over and the Knicks are guaranteeing him a roster spot, like, he will get cups of coffee. He'll probably go to the G League for a while, but as injuries pile up and you get into March and you're trying to make sure that you just have a team to put on the floor, even if it's in garbage time, he's going to get some NBA minutes next year, really as a puppy. And as long as he works hard enough defensively, which I know we'll get to just survive, just to show that he's putting Tibbs's coaching into practice, he'll get morsels to begin with, but it'll grow. And by year 2, when he is 20 years old, the age of most rookies, I think you'll start to see a lot of this flash with him. Good shooter, 3-level shooter, good cutter, unselfish player, great kid, positional size. Like, I think he's got a lot. I think he's got a lot to work with.
All right, guys, we're going to continue talking with Chuck about Pacome, tell you where he has to improve the most and what the future of his game and role looks like on the Knicks. But first, we want to tell you about our good friends over at Gametime. Gametime is an authorized ticket marketplace in Major League Baseball. This makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer gets the first pitch with killer last-minute deals, all in prices views from your seat and their lowest price guarantee. Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. Personally, I've used them for the NBA in the past. I was so happy. Wanted to go with a big group of friends when I was in Phoenix, visiting on vacation to go see the Knicks in town. And lo and behold, Gametime was there to help me out. So why did I go with Gametime at the end of the day? Well, the biggest thing was their lowest price guarantee. If you find a lower price on another site, Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. I also love that I could see views from my seat, get a panoramic view in the app before you buy. And honestly, like, there were seats that were high up, but they were cheaper. I was like, do I really want to do this? And I saw the view. I was like, you know what? That's actually not so bad. It sold me on it. They have priority last minute deals. They have flash deals. They have zone deals. So take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets and tickets to all sports with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. What does it look like for him on the ball? Because I know at this point, or at least what I've read at this point, like he's almost more advanced as kind of like an off the dribble shooter than a catch and shoot guy. And I assume earlier in his career, like he would be more like creating off of like I guess more of a secondary creator. Like Jalen Brunson drives, crashes the defense, he's able to shoot or like pump against like a defense that's already like kind of distorted and get to the rim and make that work. But do you see a future where he's ever a guy where like, are you just throwing the ball and him create something out of thin air? And like, obviously on this Knicks team with just all the wing talent they have right now, like, is there an opportunity for him there to do a little bit of that? Or do you think this is actually kind of an ideal fit with him? Because to your point, he's already so good off the ball, particularly if they keep someone like Isaiah Hartenstein, who is kind of a hub, is like, and thrives with great cutters playing off him, like playing that sort of secondary offensive role is going to come along really easily for him. And then if there's anything further to develop, it would be a few years down the line.
Probably the latter, probably a few years down the line. However, I think New York is a good context for him for several reasons. One is that they have a track record now under Leon Rose, of developing young players. Like it's clear that, whether it's Quickly or McBride or even RJ, I think to a certain extent, you could see gains in each one of their games because the Knicks are not one of these teams that like don't really practice and sort of try to loaf their way through the regular season. I mean, they're a Tibbs team. So you're going to learn on the margins how to get better. And so again, from what I understand, which is not much about his background, but the bit that I do know is that he's extremely coachable, intelligent, like very hardworking, and will be ready to go. Now, as far as the creation part of it, I think that while that's the part of his game that you look for to see upside, which is where I've looked to see the upside in him, I think that the more measurable gains that you'll want to see is if he can become an efficient off-ball player first, because the Knicks are loaded. I mean, that's what he's going to do. And if his defense reaches an acceptable level, because the reason he went in the 20s is because his feet were either slow or out of position. He would close out too aggressively, like lots of little mistakes that would put his own defense in rotation. And he's going to need to clean that up. I'm sure he knows that. He has lots of good players to learn from in New York about all of that. And so if you start to see that stuff come along pretty quickly, then I feel like the creation stuff on the ball will just be whatever. It'll be more organic. It'll be whenever, like I said, someone's out and there's naturally more opportunity. But I wouldn't think to myself, budget him in as a second side creator or anything like that, just because the reason that sort of on-ball creativity is so prioritized in the draft is that it's not stuff that coaches can really teach. Like, and that's, again, the thing going back with him and Risacher. It's very hard to teach how to manipulate rhythm and read a defender's timing and how to sort of be in control of it. If it gets to the point where he's good enough as an off-ball player to play big minutes, then the natural creativity will come out, and you'll see the touch because he'll just be able to read the space and get into open space, cover ground fairly quickly with how big he is, and get himself good looks. Because I think I mentioned that he finished well around the hoop. He shot 70% at the rim as an 18-year-old in a pro league in Europe. German league's not any great shakes, but it's not terrible. I mean, like I said, they went to Risacher's home floor and beat their team. So
can I ask, was that athleticism? Was that craft? Was that amazing touch? Like how did you get to that number?
Mostly touch, I think. His athleticism is very strange because he would cut opportunistically and get up and dunk and finish, but he's also 6'9". If you can't get up and dunk at 6'9", then there's a real problem. Yeah. I think he showed just a knack. Like, he has wide shoulders. Like I said, he's just a bigger guy than Risacher. And so if you have wide shoulders, like Dalton Connect has this, which helped contribute to his finishing numbers as well. There's just lots of stuff you can do that's short of like fully going into someone to bump them. but just little angles you give yourself where you're still relatively square towards the rim and you have a more comfortable angle than if you're skinnier and you're doing this wild contortionist stuff in the air. He knew how to keep his angles good. He was rarely, in my opinion, sped up. He could go to like little deceleration stuff to where he made sure he was square and could go off the glass, stuff like that. But just stuff that he made look easy, but that obviously is not, because if it were, then more people would do it. But the touch is really the thing that stood out the most, is that he just had, some guys just have it in their fingertips and in their hands that they just can finish around the hoop. And again, for my personal ranking, I prioritize touch very, very highly, because the best players in the league, no matter what size they are, no matter their style of play, the commonality is that they score the ball efficiently. For anyone who plays big minutes on a good team, their shot diet might differ, their usage might differ, but they score efficiently, because if you don't, then you're on the bench. And so if I'm envisioning Pacome as a possible future starter in 6 years when he's 24 years old, it's because the touch is translated and everything else has come up to where now he can, even in an NBA with Cooper Flagg and Dibansa and Cameron Boozer and all these guys that are coming through and have sort of raised the average height, he still is someone who can impose his size and his strength and his craft well enough to create the angles for himself to finish. And so I think his 3-point shot, like, I have enough faith in it to where he's not going to be a liability. I think he shot 36% on like a low volume, this year in Germany, which is fine. Again, 18-year-old, that's just fine.
All right, guys, we're going to close out with Chuck talking about Tyler Kolek. Is he truly ready to be the Knicks' backup point guard this season? Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors is everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered with over 122 million parts. For your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for with eBay Guaranteed Fit. Car is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back, because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need, the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. Yeah, I think it's the Knicks were, it sounds weird to have called them a small team before the Anunoby trade, but that is sort of what it felt like at times early in the season. Especially I remember they opened the year with the Celtics and the Pelicans, and there were just these games and these moments where they were getting bullied, and that was fresh off a playoffs where they were the bully, and it was kind of down to lack of size in the wing, to playing two small guards for long stretches, and the fact that they now have Anunoby, and then you add Bridges, and then, I mean, maybe not this year, but maybe 2-3 years down the road, especially like when these guys are a little older, and you want to be able to say, all right, OG, you're not playing 25 regular season games. Mikhail, the streak has to end, buddy. We're not going to play you 83 games in an 82 game season.
Tibbs is still the coach here in this 2 to 3 year period.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe
I would love that. Yeah,
we send him away for a few weeks. I'm not sure, but it's nice. It's nice to know that like there was another monster wing, because they did not have that person on the roster, and then obviously it took like a historical run of injuries. But even in this year's playoffs, they got to a point where even against the Pacers, like they just felt small at a certain point, and it's great to have a reinforcement there. And I think some people were, and like I kind of was as well, like we're like really in on the idea that the Knicks were going to get like someone like Baylor Shireman who could come in and perhaps be a rotation guy right away. I don't mind them taking the long view at all, because I think even last year they might have been the deepest team in the NBA, and you add someone who in Mikal Bridges, who is as likely to be on an NBA floor as anyone in the league, or more likely to be on an NBA floor than anyone in the league. I think their depth is pretty good, and I think they can afford to take the long view, especially when they traded away so much of their future draft equity. But you just spent a lot of time talking about touch and how that's a heavy factor in what you believe is a prospect's ability to translate to the NBA. Certainly applicable to Tyler Kolek, a story we've obviously heard before as Knicks fans, a short, relatively unathletic guard out of the Big East with no wingspan to speak of, who gets by on craft, guile, gumption,
Yeah.
tempo manipulation, and perhaps most importantly, outside of his passing ability, at least from what I've seen, really, really great touch on his floaters and layups that are reference Prez again. Like he put out a video on this the other day. Like I don't really get how they go in. Like they're almost like hook shots around the rim, but he is a lot of fun. How did he get it done at like playing at the highest level of college basketball, given that he's 6'1", pretty much a flat wingspan, no discernible, like explosive athleticism to speak of? And do you think that translates to the NBA for him?
I think it can. I was probably too low on Tyler. I had him in like the 50s as a draftable player, but I did not buy the first round hype for him just because it's like, you're right that Brunson and he have some stuff in common, but Brunson, National Player of the Year, like best team in a decade, like he was their guy and he shot 70% at the rim. I mean, Brunson scored as if he were some like alpha wing. He just happened to be.
He is built like a tank, which Tyler is not. So that definitely helps too.
And so if you don't have that degree of outlier scoring ability as a guard, and you're not a clearly really good defender like Jamal Shed from Houston, who got drafted by Toronto, I think. If you are lacking on defense, like because you're like those small guards, you're supposed to come in, you're Alvarado, you're supposed to be a pest, try to disrupt opposing guard ball handlers, and then just like score when you can. Because even though Tyler was, running the show at Marquette, he's not. It's rarer and rarer now that small guards come in and run the show off of the bench. Usually some star is staggered and they're playing like Alvarado plays off of Brandon Ingram in bench minutes. And maybe that would be in New York, who knows, maybe Bridges or Josh Hart or something in bench minutes. So without the defensive base, as he plays hard, but he's not that level of defender. I had a hard time seeing it. Now, I went back after the Knicks took him, watched a little bit more, and I feel like I should have been a bit more aggressive. And I think the Knicks selection of him at that spot is fine, like solid. I think there's probably a couple other guys I would have looked to, but with the rumors that Deuce McBride's going to be part of this trade for apron reasons and a need to try to replace him, I can understand it. To answer the first part of your question, which is how he got it done, it's that if there is a pass to make, he will make that pass. Like if there is a window, he is great at throwing the ball right through the window, nice and tight into like accurately wherever it needs to go. The thing about Tyler is that the system he played in with Oso Ighodaro at center, he wasn't really the one creating those windows very often. The fact that Oso was such a weapon as a high post hub or a DHO hub, and like a guy who loved to clear the paint for his guards so that he could be, 10 to 12 feet out and hit his floater. Like Oso, I think, was the one who was more responsible for some of the space that Tyler enjoyed. And Oso's a great release valve for a point guard because Oso's never going to make a positioning mistake. His hands were very good. So on any sort of pick and roll look, Kolek had great confidence to throw any kind of pass because he knew that Oso would clean it up. He would hit skips, again, very good either hand live dribble. He can do that, but he was most effective at that stuff, in my opinion, when it was sort of early offense, if not outright transition, because again, you got the defense backpedaling. You can get a little bit deeper on your drives than you are if it's in the half court. And then those passing windows are there. And as soon as the window's there, ball's out and it's in the right spot. I think the more you saw them play slower half court sets against really good guards, Big East had Stephon Castle, Devin Carter. When Kolek went up against those guys, he had some trouble, getting loose and getting free. That's where you saw sort of the issue with him, but very decisive, like never passed up an opportunity to attack off the catch if there was a closeout coming. Like he did everything that his body allowed him to do. It's just that his body allowed him only to do so much. I think if he is going to really translate to the NBA, he's got to utilize that touch and become like a floater god. I think his 3-point stroke is pretty good. He shot, 39% the last 2 years. Didn't hit as many as you'd think. He was right around 45 to 50 both seasons, which again is solid, but not like Devin Carter made 84 threes this past season by contrast. So Kolek is fine in that regard, but he's not going to create a ton of space on a step back to get his own shot off. It's more like if he's open and it's off the catch and he's got the window, then he'll let it fly. But since NBA teams so naturally concede the mid-range, that's going to be the space that is most available to him most frequently, unless guys are just going under screens. But assuming he can get them to respect them enough, he'll be in the mid-range, and that's where he's really got to make his money. That's where, if the Knicks want him to be a backup guard for a good team quickly, which is clearly, I think they're designed for him, then he's got to really cash in on that stuff. I think, being a floater guy where you can't really jump and your wingspan's kind of short, it's hard, but not impossible. And if he's always has a good play finisher at center on the floor with him, whether that's Robinson or we'll see what happens with, Hartenstein.
Yeah.
As long as he's got someone to play that 2-man game with, then I think Tyler will be okay. I still wish he defended a little bit better. I still think McBride is like clearly a better, more valuable player, but I can see at least what the Knicks are hinting at. UConn's guard, Tristan Newton, who went a few picks later to the Pacers, I would have preferred him, but I see what the Knicks were trying to do with Kolek. So I think it's okay, but sort of TBD on whether or not he can threaten defenses enough to lock down regular minutes.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting because it sounds almost like if you combined him and Deuce, you'd have your perfect backup point guard. And that Deuce, especially later on in the year, showed this. I for someone personally, and I think a lot of people were really questioning his handle. Like he was literally dropping people at points in the second half of the year. Toasted someone on this. I think maybe it might have been Lowry. I'm not sure, but brought someone to their knees on the Sixers, and yet there were all these possessions. And to his credit, they got less and less as the year went on, but especially after Julius Randle got hurt and the Knicks lost some of their depth. And of course, after the Quickly trade, where you would have these possessions where Deuce would bring it up and you'd get into your offense. It'd be 7 seconds left on the shot clock. And it just feels like, and maybe if they lose Hartenstein and they feel like they're okay at center, that would be an area to reallocate some money or to bring Rokas Jokubaitis over, who has experience, obviously, at the professional level, running an offense at a high level, but they really just need someone to make the trains run on time. And of course, if you bring in someone like that, like Kolek, but they're getting toasted on defense, then maybe you're like, all right, screw it, put Deuce back in there. We need his defense, we need his shooting, we need his creation. And it feels like Kolek is very equipped to do just that. But to your point, if it's not there defensively, if he really can't create any kind of meaningful offense for himself, then it's just not going to work, even if he knows how to make every read and to your point is aggressive enough to execute on every read. But I do think that is an important spot for them to figure out, because they just can't get toasted in the minutes that Jalen Brunson's off the floor. And of course, having Randall back, having Bridges, and you can make potentially put bench units out there with DiVincenzo, Hart, Randall, Bridges, that makes things a little bit easier, gives you a little bit more margin for error.
Of course, yeah, their depth is crazy. So as long as they stay, I think if they find themselves really depending on Kolek to prop up bench units this coming season, something has gone wrong. I think, you would hope that maybe by 25, 26, that they could feel a bit more confident in him, but he's going to have to, so I'm sure that, I won't say I'm sure. It wouldn't surprise me if the Knicks are still reeling from all those TJ McConnell minutes and saw a little bit of McConnell in Kolek. And
that is who I don't want to be overly simplistic in my comparison, but that was the first name I thought of. But yeah.
And McConnell at Arizona had a steal rate of 4, which is insane, like really good. And he doesn't have insane dimensions, but he just can get over any screen, is really up on you, and just has a knack for getting to the ball. So it's another thing that's very hard to teach. Either you have the hands that can find the ball with the coordination to poke it free, or you can't. Kolek, I think, again, fine. Okay about just hustling and making plays. People call him a dog and all this stuff, but it's never anything that has really, really popped defensively to me in watching him the way it would with a McConnell or with a Shed. So, again, TBD. I would be really pleasantly surprised if Kolek came in and was like a defensive plus in some matchups the way that McConnell is. I mean, that would really be, then you are talking about him as one of like the 25 best players in the draft if he can do that. I'm skeptical, but we'll see where it goes.
All right, guys, the fun had to end at some point. We were going to wrap up here, but fear not. I'm putting out a bonus episode in a couple of hours on this beautiful Saturday, talking to you about the other two guys the Knicks drafted, Kevin McCullough Jr., why he was an absolute steal for the Knicks with the 55th pick in the draft, and then Ariel Hukporti, someone who could maybe contribute, be a little Jericho Simsy down the road. We get into that next time on Locked On Knicks.